Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our Future of Work Virtual Summit. Today on day 2, we're going to dive a little bit more into the topic that's on everyone's mind, and that is remote work. We're going to really cover 3 things. We're going to talk about the trends that we're seeing around remote work. We're then going to talk about how companies can both embrace and enable their employees to work from a home environment. And then we'll learn about how Cisco has kept its business running during this time of crisis. We have a lot of stuff to cover today. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. As we continue this virtual summit, I'm excited to talk more about the topic that is on everyone's mind, and that is around remote work. Now with that, we have Aruna Ravichandran, who is the CMO and Vice President of Cisco Webex. Aruna, we're excited to hear from you to talk more about the trends that you're seeing around remote work and introduce us to the survey that was recently conducted about the benefits of working from home. So Aruna, with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Very excited to come and share with you some of the best practices and trends which are impacting the future of work today. Future of work is such a hot topic in the market today. But if you look even before the pandemic, it used to be one of the top agenda items on a CXO or a CIO's agenda. Why is that? Because future of work is not just about remote work. Future of work is about how you can enable employees to work very, very easily so that they can build amazing products, which in turn will have a huge impact on a company's top line as well as the bottom line. It's about being able to create those amazing experiences so that employees, partners, everyone can actually collaborate and work very well with each other so that work happens anywhere, anytime. We did a survey with over 1,500 organizations worldwide, and this was done before the pandemic. And what we learned from the survey is that there was a lot of long-term value in terms of being able to embrace remote work. Organizations who actually adopted remote work as one of their best practices have seen a lot of benefits out of being able to do remote work. A huge increase in terms of employee productivity, employee experience and satisfaction. Further, it plays a big role in terms of recruiting as well as retaining existing employees, has an impact in terms of your top line as well as your bottom line, being able to reduce your real estate costs. And last but not the least, further increases business agility and enables flexibility. So there are a lot of benefits in terms of being able to do remote work. And with the pandemic, we saw that the new future of work is going to be remote work. Even before the pandemic, if you look at it, in 2019, only 20% of employees actually work from home. But in March of 2020, 90%, I would say close to even 100% of employees actually ended up having to work from home overnight. And this trend is going to continue into the future. So if you think about conditions post-pandemic, there was a survey which was done by IBM across 25,000 people around the world. And what they found from that particular survey was 75% of the people who were interviewed said they want to have some kind of flexible remote work options, maybe work from home 2 or 3 days of the week. And 54% of the respondents actually said they want to work full-time from home. So remote work is actually going to become the new future of work. And with this remote work concept, work and life is now going to get interlinked even more, and it's going to continue to evolve. During this pandemic phase, we at Cisco actually saw a rapid adoption for 5 critical use cases when you think about remote work. So the first one is about being able to work from home, being able to enable an employee of any organization to accelerate and meet their goals and their agenda so that they can make work happen anywhere, anytime. And at this particular time, it's about being able to work from home. When people actually work from home, there is a big impact in terms of their productivity and performance. And so from a survey, we saw that there was 41% increase in productivity and performance when people actually worked remote. Another stat we also noticed is that 87% of remote workers actually felt much more connected to their team when they actually used video conferencing. Why is that? It's because when people work remotely, you want to have that connection. You want to be able to see the person you're actually having conversations with. And this is where video conferencing technologies have become extremely important part of being able to promote a remote work culture. So the second use case is what we have seen is a huge increase in terms of telehealth or remote work. So a telehealth use case was there even before the pandemic. But what we have seen during the pandemic is that more and more hospitals, more and more caregivers are actually using the telehealth use case. What do I mean by a telehealth use case? Being able to use video, audio conferencing technologies in order to continue to basically take care of your patients, continue to provide prognosis as well as diagnosis. Without this particular use case, I would think that the whole healthcare system would have actually broken down. In 2019, 19% of consumers had access to telehealth services. And I can tell you that as we move past the pandemic, this telehealth use case is here to stay. Even before, during the pandemic time, or even before the pandemic time, patients who actually had access to telehealth felt that, they got amazing quality care with telehealth visit, and it was as good as an inpatient visit. If that's the feedback we actually have gotten from our survey, I can tell you that this telehealth use case is now going to get expanded into multiple additional use cases. Think about the possibilities. Patients will have access to opportunities to talk to doctors and caregivers who are not located in their particular state. And they don't need to leave their house, and they still have the ability to basically get a lot of counseling and diagnosis from the caregivers. The third use case, which we have seen a huge rapid increase, is around virtual learning. Overnight, 50.8 million K-12 students in the United States, as well as 19.5 million students in universities and colleges, have started to work from home. And this use case is now a very important use case, because post-COVID, this use case can continue to scale, and universities will now have the opportunity to basically offer more amount of virtual learning to organizations and for students who are remote workers. And so this use case, while is a very important element during the pandemic, we actually expect this to continue to evolve as we move into the post-pandemic era. The fourth use case where we have seen a huge increase is around virtual events as well as town halls, because these events provide you with unique ways for people to actually connect and have that connection and collaboration with each other. And during the pandemic, we have seen a huge increase in terms of virtual events as well as town halls. When I talk about this, it's about being able to serve the landscape across multiple different industry, public sector, enterprises, as well as industry events across the board. Every organization is now having communication with their underlying employees using these virtual town halls. Here at Cisco, our leaders constantly have these virtual town halls so that they can check in to the well-being of their underlying employees. The fifth use case is around being able to support remote contact center agents. So previously, most of these agents used to come to a contact center facility where they used to provide the opportunity to interact with customers like ourselves. But now, given the pandemic, all of these agents who used to actually go to a facility have now automatically transformed in terms of being able to provide the same level of exceptional customer service, right, by doing it right from their homes. And this use case will continue to rapidly evolve across the board, because it gives organizations the ability to hire remote agents and deploy them very, very quickly. So as you can have seen, there are these 5 different use cases which we have seen during this pandemic, and there are additional other use cases like virtual hearings in terms of court cases, There has also been use cases around banking where a lot of mortgages are actually now done virtually. And so you can see that this whole remote work is just the beginning to a lot of additional trends which are actually going to shape the market when you think about future of work. What are some of the top trends we think will further shape the future of work? The first one is about the evolving workforce. If you look at the current workforce today, we have a quad generational workforce. We have the baby boomers, you have the Gen Y, you have the millennials or the Gen Y population, you have the Gen X, and you have the Gen Z population. So you have a quad generational workforce which coexist in the market today. And why is this an important trend? Because first time in 2 decades, you have a quad generational workforce. Usually, you'll only see a 2 generational workforce in any particular decade. Why is this important now? Because more and more of the baby boomers are actually, not retiring at a particular time. And baby boomers, while they're not retiring, the Gen Z and the Gen Y population are starting to work much more earlier. And so all of these different workforces have different work styles, different needs, different wants, but they still need to coexist and they need to work very collaboratively with each other. And so this becomes a very important trend because the underlying cultural transformation within an organization is important so that all of these various different work styles can coexist. And that's not the only important element. The underlying technology also needs to work with the multiple different work styles. The second important trend is the changing nature of work. Even before the pandemic, there was a huge increase in terms of a concept called gig economy workers. When I say gig economy workers, I'm talking about the contract workers. These are the workers who actually want to have the flexibility to be able to work anytime, anywhere, right from their homes. And there is a huge increase in the number of gig economy workers here in the United States as well as worldwide. And why is this work important? It's because they want to have flexibility. They want to be able to dial into a work environment and work their regular hours. And so there needs to be the underlying technology which needs to be able to support these gig economy workers. And that is another important trend. And given the pandemic, I would expect that the number of gig economy workers is actually going to accelerate. And so the underlying technology and the companies need to actually adapt in order to basically take care of these gig economy workers. Another important trend which has come into, which has gotten a lot of limelight recently is around security. When people actually shifted from working in a work environment and working from home, security becomes even more important. Right from the time you have to dial into your VPN into your enterprise network, to the time you basically log into your underlying corporation's network, everything needs to actually get scrutinized. And then as you're using a lot of your collaboration tools, you have to be able to do that securely. You need to be able to respect and protect users' information as they're actually collaborating. And so being able to secure users' data, being able to securely log into your corporate network, securely communicating with your peers anytime, anywhere is much more important because if you don't take care of security, it'll pretty much compromise the brand of your company. And there have been a lot of recent examples which have actually emerged during this particular pandemic. The fourth important one is about technology disruption. And this we have seen even before the pandemic. When I say technology disruption, it's about how AI is now going to play a critical role in terms of being able to further enable the collaboration technologies to make work happen anywhere, anytime. So think about, when people actually shifted to their homes, isn't it cool and it easy if there is a technology which automatically will suppress background noise? Being able to have those speakers, which will basically allow you to work anytime, anywhere, especially when you're doing remote work, is even more important. And so AI technologies to do noise suppression, being able to have a virtual assistant so that you can log into a meeting, you can communicate with your peers very, very succinctly, remotely, is another important trend which is coming to the market. Last but not the least, it's about the growing customer expectations. As you think about it, as employees have shifted into remote work and you want to make work happen anywhere, anytime, you also want to make sure that you are satisfying the needs of your end customer. And so being able to keep customer satisfaction as one of your top priorities is also going to be really, really important. And this is where the whole concept of remote agents and being able to provide the underlying technology to make work happen for those remote agents so that they can provide fantastic customer service is an important element into the mix too. So these are some of the top 5 trends which are going to play into the market as you think about future of work. And here is a blueprint we at Cisco have actually framed in order to help our community as well as our customers when you think about future of work. So the 3 important underlying elements you need to think about are, the first one is about work style. I talked about the quad generational workforce, the baby boomers, the Gen X, the Gen Y, as well as the Gen Z population. How can you create a work environment for the multi-generational workforce to coexist is extremely critical, because their work styles are extremely different from each generation after generation. For example, a baby boomer doesn't really like to join a conference using video technology. Whereas if you think about the Gen Z as well as the Gen Y population, they were born in the digital era. They basically thrive with video technology. And so how can you provide technology tools, and how can you have a cultural transformation, for the 4 different quad generational work styles so that they can coexist and work collaboratively with each other is an important part of the mix. And this is where you have to think about some of the value systems from a cultural transformation perspective, which is really critical. The second important element is the changing workspaces. Pre-COVID, I would have talked to you about the dynamic changes with respect to a work environment where you have a concept of huddle spaces, where you have open environments, as well as various different workspaces where employees actually come into work so that you can make work happen anytime, anywhere. Given the pandemic, right now your workspace is your home. And so how can you basically merge the physical as well as the virtual environment so that the various different work styles, the various different types of employees, the quad generational workforce can really adapt and they can continue to innovate at speed is an important element for you to think about. And last but not the least, it's about the workflow. When I say workflow, it's all about the collaboration technologies. And when you think about the collaboration technology, it's about the experience you can actually provide to your underlying employees. When I think about the underlying experience, it's about how easy is it in order to basically collaborate with your coworkers anytime, anywhere. The simple, easy button in order to join a meeting, a way to basically co-share, a way to be able to co-edit, a way to be able to innovate very, very smoothly and in a very agile manner. So that's what we mean by being able to enable workflows so that you can have those seamless collaboration. And a blueprint for future of work, or what I call also workplace transformation, needs to be cognitive, needs to be secure, because you cannot compromise on security, and also needs to be insightful. As you build this framework for a blueprint, you also need to have an underlying platform so that you can actually get insights to data, and you can make changes to the various 3 different pillars based upon that insights you actually get. And that becomes the foundation for future of work. And why is this blueprint important? I shared with you earlier on a survey we did, which showcases the value you actually get with a successful workplace transformation or future of work. And you can see it here from a survey which we saw. 82% of employees say that it improves their engagement and their productivity if they have the right tools for them to actually collaborate. 89% say that it actually provides an organization has happy and fulfilled employees, which in turn build amazing products, which in turn creates very satisfied customers. It has a huge impact in terms of real estate expenses, because you can actually save real estate expenses by creating an open environment, by creating those huddle spaces in a workplace. And last but not the least, if you go into remote work, you have tremendous efficiencies and tremendous opportunity to not only optimize your real estate cost, you also have an opportunity to basically further enhance the recruitment as well as retain your talent. So with that, I want to talk about, the new future of work portal, which we within Cisco have actually unveiled today. It's called futureofwork.webex.com. Please bookmark this. You're going to see a lot of additional interesting content in this particular portal. We have created partnerships with Harvard Business Review as well as Wired. You'll see a lot of fresh, relevant content around future of work, multiple different articles, multiple different videos, a lot of podcasts from futurists, from industry analysts, as well as a lot of customer transformational stories, customers who have gone through very successful workplace transformation. In addition to that, you'll also receive a lot of surveys. And we also are going to have a workplace transformation calculator where we have actually surveyed 1,500 respondents around the globe across 8 different countries, 7 different verticals. And we have established what we call an industry first workplace transformation maturity index. And by going through that calculator, you'll have now an opportunity to basically get a score, which will give you a platform to assess where you are in terms of your workplace transformation initiatives, and will also give you an opportunity to basically look into the future on where you need to basically double down and invest in order to further improve your workplace transformation or your future of work initiative. They also will have a lot of fresh new content. So please bookmark futureofwork.webex.com. Again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to basically share insights around the top 5 trends, as well as the key important use cases which have actually emerged during this pandemic era. And we'll also continue to see a lot more additional use cases, as well as a further increase in those 5 use cases as we move past the pandemic era. Thank you.
Aruna, that is a fantastic presentation and the insight into remote work. I think what we've learned is how these trends, people can adapt, especially right now, and be successful in implementing those remote work practices. So I appreciate you taking the time to share that information with us. Next in our Future of Work Virtual Summit series, I'm really excited to bring in Charlie Johnston, who is the SVP of People and Communities at Cisco. Charlie's going to talk to us about how they as an organization have enabled their teams to thrive in the current environment that we're in, and especially how teams have been able to connect and stay connected even though we've been forced to work remotely. So with that, Charlie, I'm going to turn it over to you.
So thank you so much for having me along today. I am thrilled to be here to share some of our learnings here at Cisco about the future of work and what we're doing right now as we are in this unprecedented time. So we have been on a major journey here at Cisco, and if I think back to the beginning of this calendar year, 2020, I remember doing a customer meeting with some HR directors from some of our major customers. And we were talking about digital, and I was sharing my own personal experience of myself as a consumer and how digital has transformed the way I bank, the way I communicate, the way I travel, the way that I basically engage with all those suppliers that provide services to me. And I was talking about that digital transformation was fast and furiously coming into the workplace, and that we as HR directors, and more importantly the business leaders that we support, needed to really be thinking about how we embrace the future and how we embrace this digital transformation. And I don't think any one of us at that time really could see what was just around the corner and how much disruption there was going to be with everything that we're experiencing right now with the COVID-19 pandemic. So what I want to talk today about is some of our learnings. And I guess the first learning is that the future is now. We're here. Digital technology is changing how we're all operating. It's providing that lifeline for all of us to continue to be able to work from home and live through this crisis. And I guess the first thing that I ask of any leader that I'm supporting is, how intentional are you being about your leadership? And I think that's one of our initial learnings here at Cisco, is to ask of every single leader to really be intentional with their team about how they want to lead right now. And share something like this. This is my own leadership intentions that I shared with my team, and constantly put them back up and ask your team how you're doing. So either do that on forums where you bring them together virtually, or ask anonymous surveys, or ask some people to be honest with you about how you can do things differently. And be human. Share that this is not easy for you as well, because you yourself are going through this change and adapting to having to work in fundamentally different ways. And really be communicating all the time, I think, has been one of the lessons that we've really learned over the last few weeks here at Cisco, the importance of that regular check-in, paying attention, really having the real, authentic human conversations. And this journey that we've been on from a digital disruption perspective started really, I would say, in earnest 5 years ago. Cisco's always been changing, always been adapting to the new things that are occurring. But 5 years ago, we got a new CEO, and Chuck Robbins took over as basically a new CEO after 20 years of John Chambers being at the helm. And I remember one of the things that was really fascinating for me with Chuck's taking over the new role was, first and foremost, he wasn't the heir apparent. He actually leapfrogged the person who looked like was probably the heir apparent, who was his boss. We had gone through a long, convoluted process. But in that, he was really clear, but one of his primary goals was to drive culture change. And this book here, The 9 Lies About Work, written by one of my colleagues, Ashley Goodall and Marcus Buckingham from the AVP organization, basically shares some of the lessons that we've learned and some of the work that we've been doing to, I guess, radically transform how we think about talent, how we lead, what we do differently. And like many companies over the last few years, we have been getting rid of performance ratings, moving from annual listening surveys, moving from annual performance reviews and talent discussions, taking away things like 9 blocks, really trying to focus on different ways to lead in this new world, thinking about how we engage with our people in fundamentally different ways. And I think that's been a big part of what we've been doing over this last few years, is engaging fundamentally differently. So since Chuck took over, one of the things that we've done is have a monthly company meeting where we engage with all of our employees, and they can hear directly from our CEO and his executive team. They can ask questions of them. They can engage in chat. They can be involved in polls. They can give their feedback real time on what's going on. And what Chuck and his leadership team's been able to do is cut out middle management and go direct to employees and share perspectives. But more importantly, they've been able to listen. The technology that we're using to listen to our employees is considerably different today than it was a few years ago. It's real time. It's using AI to get a measure of sentiment. It gives us the ability to ask consistent questions across every single team at Cisco in a very simple way, on demand at a point in time, that gives us an engagement score. And it's much more reliable than previous surveys that we've done in the past. But I think a big thing we've learned over the last few years has been that teams are a major part of what we are focused on. And this idea that your experience is of course about the company you work for, but it's much more about the team you're in and the leader you work for. And what we also see is that teams are totally changing. Teams are no longer something that gets set up for 2 or 3 years. A team could come together to rally around a particular project or point of purpose that they have. It could then go and disband and work on something else. So the systems and capabilities need to be digital and need to come together and need to connect like never before. We've done a ton of research as well on our best teams at Cisco, and we know that there's 3 common characteristics of our best teams at Cisco. They have a strong sense of purpose, so they really know what they're there to do. They're an environment where everyone's playing to their strengths, and there's a high degree of safety and trust. And of course, one of the other things that's been incredibly important to us over the last few years is diversity. And you'll see that we've got one of the most diverse executive leadership teams of any Fortune 100 company, based on the focus that Chuck has pushed into the organization on this particular point. But really being focused on teams has been a major part of what we've been trying to do, as well as get clear about purpose and meaning. And we've been talking a lot about this idea of a conscious culture, and never has it been more important than right now in this pandemic, with the technology that we've got and the fact that people aren't in the office, aren't operating in the same ways as they were. And what we're talking about when we talk about conscious culture is this idea of everyone at Cisco plays an active role in the culture. Every single person will do something on a daily basis that basically influences our culture. So we've been talking a lot to our teams about the importance of everyone understanding themselves. So it starts with really knowing myself, knowing my strengths, knowing when I'm at my best, knowing when I'm maybe not at my best. Talking about things like giving your ego a day off. So that this idea of actually, this is not just all about you, that we're here in service of Cisco and the world, and actually being able to put that to your ego to one side and really think about how you work differently in this new world, being bold. And then of course, it's not just about what do I know about myself, it's about how do I work effectively with others? How do I work with difference? How do I make sure that people see and connect with me? How am I resilient? And how do I enable well-being in this environment as well? And really thinking about what we can do for our people to really ensure that they bring this to life. And then the other big thing that we've been focused on is being much more purposeful about the context in which we're operating, the society in which we're operating. So we've been doing some really innovative things to give back and to think about the context in which every Cisco employee is operating across the globe. So making sure they take accountability for giving back, making sure that we're utilizing insights and intelligence, the data, to think about what's really going on in the environment that we're operating in. And I guess I'd say here, what have we learned is that in this new world, in the way that we're now all operating, this becomes even more important because you're not physically seeing people on a regular basis. You're not connecting with them in the same way. So all of this stuff that we've been talking about, that we've been making at the heart of the change that we've been driving here at Cisco becomes even more important in this particular context. And I touched on it, trust and safety. You know, I think this is the place where we've been really focused over these last few weeks to make sure that people really understand that we're here for them, that we need to support them, that we want to listen to them, that we want to understand more about how we can help them. And we need every single one of our leaders from the top down to model the way. And we're talking less about leadership now here at Cisco and much more about followership. We're asking our leaders to get really clear about the importance of the role that they play in modeling the way, and the importance for them to show some vulnerability, that they don't have all the answers, and for them to really ask 3 questions. You know, why would anyone follow me? What's important to me? And what do I need to do to model the way? So those would be questions that we're asking on a regular basis to every single one of our leaders. And the research we've done shows that if someone answers that they strongly agree with the statement that they fully trust their leader, they're 12 times more engaged than the average employee. So this comes back to this piece about the leader in a team playing such a significant role. And it's times like this where I think that authenticity becomes really important, the empathy becomes really important. People want to see the real you. And I think we've got this unique opportunity now to show the real you in our houses, not in our offices that look cookie cutter like every other office at Cisco. We can show something about ourselves. We can talk about the fact that we ourselves might be struggling, and we can show that we care about everyone that works for us. And we want to show that empathy through everything that we're doing. So there's been a ton of lessons learned for us over the last few weeks and months, but I think probably the first thing that I would say that we've learned is the importance of connection. And we also know that one of the things that we're learning and we're trying to do something about as a company in the societies in which we operate is that the digital divide is really shining through right now, that we have 1/3 of people in developing economies won't have access to the internet. So we've got to think about how we do something about that in the societies in which we're operating. We know that the connection piece is really important. Our people want to see that we're doing something about some of these major societal issues. So we've been doing a lot to really think about the role that Cisco plays in influencing change for the positive in some of these societies, how we're going to embrace the digital divide and do something about it. We're also being really focused on just, you know, the human connection. So making sure our leaders are paying attention. We now have a weekly company meeting where the CEO and the leadership team are talking openly about some of the challenges that they themselves are having with this new way of working. In fact, Chuck, our CEO, was presenting one day and his grandchild walked in and started to talk about the fact when was he going to get off his screen and come and spend time with them. That's when I think we became very human, when you can see that that is okay for that kind of thing to happen and it's happening to the CEO. So that paying attention, being, finding ways to check in and recognizing that some people are struggling, they're parenting, they're teaching at home. We're going to have to adapt and adjust. And actually, one of the things we've had to do is give people permission to really be clear about what they need from us with their leader. And actually also saying to our leaders in these forums as well, this is what we need to be doing right now. This is how we need to bring to life the Cisco culture for all of our employees. They may need something different for us right now. And we need to think in different ways to be more productive. Like, how might we work differently? What working patterns might we use? How might we be okay with cameras not being on, or someone else stepping in, or potentially someone working different kind of hours to support their family in different ways? And then I think the other big thing that we're doing is we're having real conversations about things like mental health, showing that emotional literacy is key. It's okay to have conversations about feelings. It's okay to say this is hard. It's okay to say I'm struggling with something. It's okay to say that I might need to put in place some new rituals to get some balance. And we've been providing tools and mechanisms direct to our people through the many forums we've got from a development and communication perspective to enable them, to empower them, to support them, to allow them to have these real conversations. Just some examples of some of the great best practices out there is building communities who are doing virtual sport together, building communities where they come together and do mindfulness or yoga, and bring families in, bring your kids to work day, literally, into your room. Virtual cocktail hours, just trying to think fundamentally differently about how we use this technology in new ways. The other big thing I've personally been doing is twice a day have a walk and talk. So I come off the camera, come away from this screen, I just go on a good old fashioned phone and I speak to someone and I walk around my neighborhood and get some of my steps in. And it's a really good way of just getting a break from the crazy context that we're operating in. And then we're having to look at our policies and our support, and we're having to move at a speed like never before. Those days of spending hours and months debating policy change, we're having to do those at a minute's notice because the world has changed at such a quick pace, and we're having to make decisions quite centrally at times, involve different voices, but go for a 80-20 rule applying that we might not always have 100% perfection, but we're going to be okay with that. And I guess that really comes to the biggest learning, is that I think this could be the new norm for all of us as leaders, that technology is going to fundamentally shift, and that actually in the future going for a 2-hour meeting and getting on a plane to go and do that may be a thing of the past, that we will have to think fundamentally differently about this opportunity that this change is going to bring to ourselves. But I think the biggest learning, and I can talk from personal experience, is that I think what we've learned is that it's really important to be kind to yourself, to not have to have all the answers as a leader, to embrace people in this, to be human, and really just meet people where they're at. That has probably been one of our biggest learnings, that the technology has equalized the experience for every one of us, and we've all become quite human, and we've had to work through how we manage this change. So that's probably our learnings here at Cisco. Thank you so much for having me along to this forum. We'd be delighted to share any more about our journey with anyone who's interested at any point in the future. Thanks so much.
So Charlie, thank you for sharing that information. And I think we heard yesterday from Michael Bush, who talked to us about some of the things that they do as far as the ranking of the great places people can work at. One of the things that he specifically highlighted was the element of trust and trusting your leaders. And I love how you have highlighted that as a key principle that Cisco has put forward to ensure that people trust one another, but also their leaders. How did that come to be? You mentioned some research around that, but talk to us a little bit more about how you ensure that employees have that trust and in their leadership team.
This is something I think that we're working on, and we're continuing to evolve. But what we have been doing is the work that we've done with some of the technology that we're using is basically established a benchmark, established some questions that are going to measure trust in as objective a way as we possibly can. So my experience, how I'm feeling, and actually share that with my leaders. So we will have questions that we have 8 questions, and we'll measure against those 8 questions. A couple will measure trust, and we'll share that with the leader, and the leader will talk to their team about the results and have a conversation. But I think the most important thing with trust is regular ongoing dialogue, really open, walking the talk, doing the things you say you're going to do, being consistent, showing that empathy, making sure you're true to your word, making sure that you're curious, meeting people where they're at. This is a time where people will have mistrust. They will be worried, they'll be concerned, they'll be in a place of fear. And really understanding the neuroscience of trust and the neuroscience of leadership, I think, is becoming more and more part of how we're operating here at Cisco. So not just taking the data, but actually equipping our leaders with the skills and the wherewithal to just understand what might be happening with the brain at a particular point in time, and how you might influence change, or how you might do stuff or unconsciously or consciously that might be impacting trust. So the key thing in all of this is conversation. So one of the solutions that we have driven here within People and Communities at Cisco is what we call a Power of Teams session. And we'll basically conduct one of those surveys before that session, and then we'll sit down with the team and their leader, and we'll take them through an experience whereby we're basically asking a ton of questions and brainstorming and having real conversations and encouraging the leader to be really curious and really humble and really authentic, and really taking them on this journey of exploration about how can we be better as a team. So we're all in this together. I think it's a complex topic, and I think what's really important in all of this is it's not just about data. Of course, that's important. It's about the real conversations.
Yeah, and I love how you talked about, with obviously the trust, the authenticity that comes, where you put people at the center and make it real. I love the example of having the company conversation, and Chuck's grandchild, kid walks in, right? And you welcome him in, right? This is, in a sense, the new norm. Like, we're going to have family interruptions, but that's okay. We don't have to shun each other out from that. And so I love that example. I love the example of how at Cisco now we have the weekly discussion with the leadership team, so that we are connected, because we aren't coming into the office, but we're staying connected that way. Any learnings from those weekly sessions that have been aha moments for you? And is that something they're going to continue, or maybe not?
Well, I think it's a good question that we're asking ourselves right now. Is some of the things we put in place in this temporary space, will they continue to be there in the future? Because I think none of us really knows what's around the corner right now and how quickly we're all going to be back to normal. And I think we're definitely getting some feedback that our people are really appreciating that proximity of the leaders to them, particularly right now. So I don't know, I think we'll probably look at that as time goes on and see whether we could continue to do that. I think a lesson learned is definitely not to try and make these things perfect. I think we're doing it at home. We don't have all the answers. Showing that we don't have all the answers, and that's okay, I think is really important. I think the role modeling from the top is something we all want to see. So we don't want to see a nice slide that says, here's how we're going to be as a company, and then see our executive team behave in a fundamentally different way. So what I think we're seeing right now is our leadership team at the top modeling everything they're asking of us. And you know what I also think is really important is we're using humor. I think we don't have all the answers. There's a ton that I think we can all feel very privileged about here at Cisco, and I think trying to bring some lightheartedness into some of this as well. I've seen Chuck do that really effectively, and it just goes, you know what, we're all in this together, and I think we're all human. So I would just say the human element to this is the bit that we keep thinking through, and I think the role modeling from the top becomes the most important thing, I think.
Love it. Charlie, thank you so much for taking the time out and telling us about some of the best practices Cisco has implemented things that you have learned and things that, where directionally things might go in the future. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Not at all. No problem. Great to spend some time with you, Scott.
And that wraps up an amazing day 2 of our virtual summit series on the future of work. I want to thank Aruna Ravichandran and Charlie Johnston for joining us today to talk about the trends they're seeing in remote work, as well as how companies can be successful in navigating this new world that we live in. Now, day 3 promises to be absolutely amazing. We're going to hear from executives from companies like NVIDIA, Under Armour, Broadcom, and the Jimmy Kimmel Live Show on how they are driving these future of work initiatives, but also how they've successfully navigated this current crisis that we're in to be successful as businesses themselves. With that, we'll see you tomorrow on day 3.